Johnny is what some might call a good Christian. He goes to church, he reads his Bible, and he spends time in prayer. He's a hard worker, and he's going to school. Johnny has some friends. They like to go out on adventures, and they also like to go out late. One night, Johnny stays out late with them, just a little too late. And the next day, Johnny, he didn't read his Bible, he didn't spend time in prayer, he was late to work, and he was dozing off in class. This cycle continued for about a couple months, and after that couple months passed, Johnny realized how far he was from God, and how bad of an employee he had become, and how he was falling behind in his classes. So, Johnny then decided to quit going out late with his friends. They didn't like that, but Johnny didn't care. His spiritual, emotional, and physical health were far too important. Welcome back to the Canadian Crusade podcast, where we call and equip the young men of Canada to take a stand for the Christian faith, to act like men, and to be bold in the gospel of their salvation. I am your host, Jackson Scott. I'm glad that you're back with us. Well, I guess with myself right now. My brother Michael, who was co-host of the show, he's going to be off for a little bit. We're going to have him on. I couldn't say definitely every month, but he's gonna be coming on as a recurring guest. He will no longer be a co-host, but he will be a guest for us all. So that's something to look forward to. Yeah, just thinking about what's coming. I'd like to do a Q&A episode, so if you guys could actually send me your questions for that, I'd actually appreciate that very much. Yeah. So right now, the season is relationships and women. And right now we're not exactly away from talking about women because this specific episode is on boundaries. So having boundaries does relate to women, right? So yeah, I'll just start off with the first point here. Let's go right into boundaries with friends. So, I've had experience that in my own experience. The first boundary, one of the boundaries that I had to set with my friends was an actual time limit. Because as we heard about Johnny in the cold open, he was hanging out too late with his friends, and that affected his life. It affected his time with God, reading his Bible and prayer, his work, and his school. So the same thing wasn't exactly happening to me, but it's not good to not get a good night's rest, because it really does affect everything that you do throughout your day and throughout the week. So that was one thing that I had to set in place at one point. I just had to make sure that I wasn't staying out too late, even though, yeah, it is hard because, you enjoy you enjoy staying out late with your friends. Like, can't even lie about that. Like, you do, because it is a good time, uh, just hanging out with brothers. But you got to be realistic. Well, I mean, you just really got to set, like, what are the priorities in your life? What is actually most important? Are your friends more important or is God more important? And a lot of the time, myself included, very much so, we put God second. So we got to be aware of those things that put God second, right? So yeah, so that's one thing, time limits when it comes to work, time limits for having time with your family, right? Hobbies, setting time limits so that you can actually have time to do other things that interest you. Like, I don't know. I know a lot of people like doing woodworking, or I don't know, mountain biking, hiking, bouldering. There's so many things that you could do, right? Um, and also, I have here another thing that is very, very important is rest. You got to make the time for your rest. You know, Actually, that was one thing that I lacked in. I didn't set a good boundary when I was actually dating my wife. Um, yeah, and going through that engagement period, it was actually detrimental to her and to myself. And it was a huge lack of leadership on my end as a man. I look back on it and I was just like, man, what an idiot I was. Really, I really was, because like calling late is a huge temptation, I think, for everybody. and then also just hanging out late when you probably shouldn't be, and then hanging out late also leads to other temptations, which is silly. You should actually make sure if you're in that kind of situation, make sure that you're setting those boundaries in place, man, because it can get dangerous. Genuinely, you want to be guarding yourself and making sure that you're caring for her, right? That sacrificial love, that sacrificial responsibility that you have towards this lady. So yeah, just guarding your heart and hers, and guarding your time and guarding her time, making sure that her life is actually going to be okay the next day. You know what I mean? Making sure that she's able to do the tasks that she needs to do the next day properly. And if she's not doing them properly, it's your fault because you're hanging out too late. That's just a little thing. That's what I would say to myself a couple of years ago. I'd probably give myself a slap in the face if I'm being honest. Honestly, I really would. Um, anyways, next thing when it comes to boundaries is financial boundaries. And I think this really ties into actually hanging out with friends because the temptation is always there. Like, usually when you're hanging out with friends is to spend money. Even going to bouldering, like something like that, you'd have to set a limit depending on what your budget is. I mean, if you're willing to put down like $100 a week on bouldering or something, man, good on you, bro. Like, honestly, that's great. Well, I don't know what you're doing for a job, or if you're just like have a terrible budget, you know. But just really actually thinking about finances and like where are you putting them? Where are you putting your finances? Like if you're hanging out with your friends late at night, you're definitely gonna be spending money. So yeah, where am I getting at with this? Just the money that you have is given to you by the Lord, and we have to steward that well, you know. So just think about that. Have that in the back of your mind. Your money is not your own. I mean, really, like the fact that I have this shirt on is the fact that because God has blessed me with a shirt. The fact that I have a roof over my head is because God has blessed me with a roof over my head. You know what I mean? God has been so gracious and merciful to me. Yeah, what a blessing. But yeah, just really thinking about those finances. Like, are you saving up for a house? Are you saving up for a car? Are you? I don't know. What do you have? What a goal? What is a goal that you have that you need to meet financially? And are you actually setting aside what you need to set aside for that instead of spending those, I don't know, like $20 a day or whatever, or $15 a day on lunch, something like that? Because I used to spend a retarded amount of money on Tim Hortons, buying one double double in the morning, a large, and then one double double on the way back, and usually a donut with that as well. But in the morning, I would get two sausage farmers wraps. So those things are like $7 a pop, or I think 7.5 or something like that. So I was spending $15 plus however much the stupid coffees were. Like it's actually crazy. Like let's do that quick. So seven, so that was 15, and I think they're like 220, so 17.20. And if I was getting a donut, I don't know, like a donut's like $1. I literally have no clue. I haven't been to Tim Hortons in the longest time. But either way, like you're almost coming up to $20 in the morning, and then another $7 in the evening. So that's $27 a day on Tim Hortons. That was a ridiculous amount of money to spend on Tim Hortons when I was working in uh, union carpentry. And also I was a single man, so it's pretty easy to fall into that temptation. I find that's for sure, but it's just really a lack of discipline, right? So yeah, just setting those boundaries in place. Like if your friends are asking you to hang out and it's like you have to spend money an X amount of dollars to get to do this thing and that's not really within your budget, I would say no to that because really you do have to set those boundaries in place and make sure that you have it in your mind. Even though this might be a very fun experience, the money that you're actually guarding and save and putting aside, it's going to serve you in the future. So I think it's better to guard yourself financially than looking for a fun experience. You know? I don't know. You guys tell me what you think about that. Next thing with boundaries with friends is communication. So, like, what are you guys willing to talk about? You know what I mean? Like making sure that there are clear boundaries in place of what you're actually willing to talk about. Because there might be things that you just don't want to talk about, or you're just uncomfortable talking about it. And sometimes you just gotta man up, absolutely, and just talk about whatever the thing is. But sometimes you actually have to set a clear boundary in place and just be like, hey, man, brother, uh, I'm not really willing to talk about this. It's just, you just gotta make sure that they know, and you have to communicate that clearly, right? And yeah, I'm trying to think of an example for that, but I can't even think of any. Is there any examples that you guys could think of for that? Be interested to hear. Like, let me know in the comments down below. What is one communication boundary that you've had to set in place with your friends? I'd actually love to hear that, so I could have an example in my mind for next time. Um, oh yeah, and by the way, as we're going through this episode, it's probably gonna be a shorter episode. It's not gonna be like blog and Mablog, like however long those things are, like 10 minutes. They're gonna be probably doing them by myself. I think averaging half an hour to 45 minutes, something like that. So yeah, so just so so you guys have that in the back of your mind, they're not going to be in. I don't think that they're going to be an hour long anymore. But yeah. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, moving on into the second point is boundaries with women. Mm-hmm. So boundaries with women. The first thing that came to my mind when writing this was physical distance. Just yeah, like making sure you're keeping your distance. I'm not talking about no COVID nonsense, but like you're 6 feet apart. Oh boy, brother. Anyways, now keeping your physical distance and just as an appropriate distance. I don't even think maybe that's not even a boundary. Maybe it is, but it's like I think it's just common sense. You're not gonna just like get right up close to a chick because that's freaking weird, dude. Like you're a creep if you're doing that. Like what the hell? But yeah, another thing is just not being alone. It's a very healthy practice for sure. I mean, it really depends. Like, I'm just talking about women in general, but I'll get into like when you're pursuing somebody. So, women in general, you know, yeah. I mean, if it is a lady that's somebody that you're not pursuing and not actually looking to take the next step potentially, yeah, there's no way. Like he just can't be like I can't even emphasize this enough. Like he can't be alone with a woman that isn't your spouse or like or yeah, like you know, because first I just think there's potential for there could be potential for temptation and then also like what am I going to see when I see you and her together alone, you know? I'm gonna think there's something fishy there. I think that's a little sketch. Like why are you with this lady by yourself? It's kind of weird. You know what I mean? So, and the qualification for an elder is to be above reproach, and I mean to me that's kind of veering of not being above reproach. And we're supposed to be not just well thought of within our Christian community by brothers, by the fellow saints, but also by outsiders, right? That's another qualification for an elder. And obviously, us men should be striving for those things, right? So, imagine an unbeliever seeing you, a Christian man, with this lady who is not your spouse, and they're aware. They know that she's not your spouse, or you're not pursuing her, or whatever, and you're hanging out with her alone, or just it's a little odd. It's like, huh, what are they doing going into that room together? Huh. It's kind of weird. You know what I mean? It's just really not a good idea. It's just why why have there be why would you give the potential for other people to think poorly about you? You know what I mean? Obviously a lot of the time it's just like, yeah, well, who gives a crap what people think about me? But if it's something where people could think less of you or yeah, that you not be well thought of by the outsiders, by unbelievers, or within the church. Why would you give any potential for there being those kind of thoughts? I mean, to me, it seems pretty stupid. You know, it just doesn't make sense. Um, but yeah, and and then another point I have is just emotion. You know, like guarding their emotions, and I think that kind of ties together with physical distance and emotion because the closer that you are with a lady, excuse me, like it's just how do I say this? Women are emotional creatures, right? So the more that we're showing interest in them could cause them to think that, well, we're interested in them, even though we might not actually even be attracted to them whatsoever. Or just think, oh, that's a nice lady, and that's it. You know what I mean? So I think it's best to guard that lady from potentially becoming emotionally attached to you or just actually developing some sort of feeling towards you when you literally don't feel that way. You know, you're just guarding her. And I think that's the best thing to do, right? Yeah. Let me know what you guys think on that. Yeah. Yeah, and I think like have touched on this multiple times already, you know? But yeah, I think it's just worth mentioning again, and it really does tie into the boundaries. But now getting into boundaries with women that you're pursuing, that you're dating, and yeah, looking towards to get married, right? So first thing I have, don't be alone together. And you know, if you're picking the lady up for church, I think that's fine. You know, like it's been seen within the church and by those whom you know that are unbelievers that you're pursuing this woman. So if you're picking her up for church for Sunday, or if you guys are going out for a date together, you know, I mean, it's kind of weird if you don't pick her up. You know, it's like, hey, lady, you want to meet me at so and so place and or whatever, instead of going picking her up and then going to whatever the restaurant. You know, I think that's fine. I think that's fine. I just want to make that clear. But for example, you shouldn't be in a house alone together. I really think that's very dangerous. Like, I don't know. It's been said that different temptations for different men. But sure, I do agree. Like, some men are more inclined to lust than to wrath. You know, I'd be more inclined to wrath than to lust for myself. But really, though, it's just once you're pursuing this lady, obviously you're coming to get to know them better. You're starting to actually have stronger feelings for them. Maybe you're in love with them already. Maybe you're at that point. Maybe you love them now. And maybe they love you. And that love can be strong, right? So, if you're alone, that can lead to something else, right? I don't really think you guys want to have a baby before you're married. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously, a child is a blessing from the Lord, but it'd be committed in adultery. So, you know, I know, like, it's really a good idea to guard yourself from being alone. You know, don't open that love up until it's time. You know what I mean? It's, and I'm like, yeah, like it's really, it's not worth it, man. It's not a good idea. And then also, what are people gonna think if they know that, oh, Buddy's at chick's house over there, and yeah, they're alone. There's nobody else there. Don't you think that's kind of weird? You know, wouldn't that be a little strange knowing that Johnny and Susie are together in one house, all alone, nobody else is there? Hmm, I wonder what they're doing, you know? Like, come on. Like, really? You gotta be guarding yourselves. Really, like, purity is something that you want to maintain. You want to actually maintain pure and keep yourselves for marriage. It's hard, man. It's friggin' difficult. So don't put yourself in a place where you could be where you could be tempted to sin. If you see that it could be a temptation for you to sin, put it to death. Don't even allow yourself to be in that situation because it's retarded. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's actually dumb. And yeah, so I guess that was another point, purity. And yeah, just really having the conversation of what what amount of physical touch are you guys comfortable with, right? I think that's a clear boundary that has to be set in place. So for example, like, is hand holding okay? For some people, maybe it's not. And I think that's weird. But for some people, kissing is not okay, you know? And it's like, you just got to make sure that that is clearly communicated and that boundary is set. If she's not okay with kissing, well, I mean, you got to hold it together, buddy, and don't kiss. And even though it's tempting, I know it is. It is very tempting. But who is who's more important, you know? She is more important than you are. Like, think of others more important than yourselves, you know what I'm saying? Especially the lady that you're pursuing. Um, yeah. So, yeah, just have those, communicate clearly and make sure that those boundaries are set in place. Whatever it is, whatever that you guys are okay with. Obviously, you guys shouldn't be okay with having sex before marriage because that's retarded. You know it. So, just don't do that, obviously. Um, yeah, and then communicating clearly on what are you guys willing to talk about? Because there might be certain things that maybe you shouldn't be talk about, or maybe you just don't want to talk about. Like, for example, um, like if you're in the engagement stage or going from dating stage to engagement, you know, obviously like you're gonna be thinking about sex. Like, there's literally no way that you're not thinking about that because when you get married, that's exactly what you're doing. So you might not be comfortable, and it might be too much of a temptation to actually talk about sex at a certain time before marriage, you know. Um, so yeah, just make sure that you know what the ladies' needs are in terms of that, and what communicate like what conversation topics are good and what are not good. You know, like, obviously you're gonna get to know each other and understand like where you guys are financially, like what do each other's savings look like, you know, what are the goals, what are you saving for, you know, stuff like that. That's good. But yeah, just making sure that you have those, that clear communication is key, ladies and gentlemen. It really is. If you have poor communication, your relationship is going to suck. I can tell you that right now. Absolutely. Yeah, so if you do suck at communicating, try and like be at work, man. Be at work, work that muscle. Work it, really, because in the long run, it's going to provide so many dividends. It's going to be insane. I mean, I've only been married 2 years, so what do I really know, right? But I don't know. Communication. Trust me on that one. It's like you need to have good and clear communication within your relationship, in the dating relationship, engagement, and marriage. And really in all your relationships, clear communication, right? Clarity is kindness. Remember that. Anyways, yeah. So, and this is an interesting one. Boundaries with parents. Very interesting. So, first thing that I have here is that I just have the point of, you know, at a certain age or whatever stage that you are in your life, like, let's say, I don't know, you're an adult. Let's say you're an adult now, you know. You're no longer their possession, you know. They obviously you have to honor your father and your mother, but you're not no longer like doing everything that they say and everything like that. You know, you're living your life, you're trying to pursue success on your own away from them. And if you're with a lady or if you're married, you know, like, you've cleaved to your wife, you've left your parents. And so basically, what do I mean by you're not their possession? What I mean by that is that let me think this through here. What was I thinking? We are not their possession. Basically, like, they can't really ask you to do whatever anymore. It's like, and like, you just think about childlike faith. You just do what they say, but you're not in that stage anymore. And they might feel that way. It's almost like them losing that power or control over you. It's I think for some it might be a heavy loss, and it's hard for them to deal with. I think that'll probably be hard for me. Thinking about it right now, I think that will actually be hard. But yeah, like, I'm not even sure what I really mean by that. Honestly, it's too bad Mike ain't here to give me some feedback. But yeah, we're not their possession. Like, what do you guys think about that? And maybe you guys could expand upon that in the comments and let me know what you're thinking of that. Um, Another thing, I don't even know why I wrote this down, but a point I have is guilt tripping. And basically, I just remember that I've been guilt tripped, and don't let that take a hold of you, man. Like, don't, just because they're trying to make you feel guilty, bro, who cares? Whatever. Like, don't let that hold any power over you at all. Like, it holds no water in the end. It's just silly business, right? So, yeah. Like, and, oh yeah, and talking about boundaries, so guilt tripping. Like, for something like that, like if they're saying, trying to use your faith against you or something like that, or like, oh, well, isn't this what Jesus would do? Or isn't this what God would do? I don't know if you can understand that. But, like, you have a firm foundation in the faith, right? So you don't really have to give an account for why you're doing X, Y, or Z. Like, sometimes your answers are just no, and you just have to stand firm in that. And that's kind of a boundary that has to be placed. And if they don't understand that, well, I mean, what can you do? I mean, it's just kind of too bad. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes in certain scenarios, I don't know what your guys' scenario is, but maybe you could send me a text or an email. Let me know what you're going through. Um, Sometimes distance can be a healthy thing, and actually, sometimes distance, depending on the situation or circumstance, the relationship, sometimes distance can actually grow a relationship, because sometimes that distance is what was necessary for it to become a healthier relationship. And I mean, sometimes that might be hard to grasp, but I think it is true. At least it has been true in my case. Um, yeah, just because, yeah, it's just certain things, whatever it is that you're dealing with, like, distance is a healthy thing. So if that's a boundary that you have to set in place, do so. And thinking for the people that are married, I think that a lot of the time, I mean, it depends on each scenario, but if this is you, this is for you. Um, Sometimes parents might want to kind of like, uh, how can I say this? Like, rule in your marriage, or, yeah, rule in that relationship. And you can't allow that. You know, your marriage is between you and your wife. It's not between you and your wife and your parents. That's it's not what God says. We leave our parents and we cleave to our wives, right? So that's kind of broken. Not saying that you don't have a, like, now that you're married. Oh, bye bye, parents. See you later. No, absolutely not. Because they, Lord willing, will be the grandparents to your children. Lord willing, right? So you're not just doing away with those relationships, but you can't let them have, like, rule in your marriage, because, or even try to have a certain say in your marriage, because it'll just be unfruitful, and it'll cause, I think it can cause division within your family, right? With your relationship with the parents, and also it can cause division with you and your spouse, and that's a dangerous thing. Whatever is a cause for friction in your marriage, for some sort of division, and where Satan wants to bring it apart, because obviously once there is a union in Christ, what do you think Satan's going to want to do? He's going to want to destroy that. He's at work in all of our marriages. He's trying to destroy it. The godly marriages, right? He's trying to kill them. So don't be surprised when things do come up, right? Don't be surprised. But knowing that if something is, and you see something that is going to cause friction or is going to be cause for division in your marriage, put that to death or distance yourself from whatever that is. Um, yeah, and that in some cases can be parents. And that distance is sometimes necessary. And that's a boundary that you might have to put up. It's unfortunate, but sometimes it'll suck for them. But what's more important, your relationship with your wife or your relationship with your parents? I ask that as a serious question. You know, just think about that. What's more important, your spouse or your parents? For me, it's my spouse, right? My wife is the most important lady in the world, absolutely. And second to her is my son. And then everybody else is second. Everybody else is second. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that was I don't know if that was of any use to you guys, but you can let me know what you think about that. But yeah, I don't really know if I have anything else for boundaries. Yeah, I don't know. Not really sure. I don't really think so. If there's any other things that you guys have had experience with having to set up boundaries with friends, women, uh, whoever, parents, let me know. And how did it go? How did they take it? And what was that like? Because it's an interesting muscle to have to work. Like, because I think for basically everybody, I don't know if for everybody, but the boundary muscle is a weird one to work out. It's really strange because it's definitely uncomfortable. It's it's kind of like awkward conversations, or it's just weird things that maybe it's not clearly communicated, but by your actions they know that that boundary has been set. And sometimes that's really awkward. But yeah, sometimes they're genuinely necessary for for your own good and for the good of your family. So, yeah, what's more important, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, and honestly, yeah, I think for a lot of these relationships, we can end up idolizing them. So, yeah, genuinely, I think time as a whole for all relationships is actually a huge one. Don't let a relationship, whatever relationship, your marriage or relationship with your son, with your parents, with your boss, with whoever, take away from that time that you have with God, right? Because at the end of the day, our relationship with God is the most important. Our relationships on earth are as a vapor, but our relationship with our Father in heaven is literally forever. You know, He has known us from eternity past. He has known that He was gonna make us since eternity past. He's literally known everything. So this is the one that literally has known us since eternity past. And throughout all of eternity, He's going to know us. So this is the most important relationship. So for example, I remember during my dating and engagement period, I think I idolized my my relationship because of all the time that I was wanting to spend with her. You know, it was yeah, it wasn't exactly a time where I wasn't on like the spiritually highest or whatever you'd want to call it, but definitely wasn't the best, you know, because I realized and acknowledged that I was spending too much time with her. And in that sense, I definitely was idolizing that relationship. So, Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. What are some relationships in your life where genuinely they're actually taking away from your time with God? When time in His active and living Word and time in actual prayer and genuine communication and talking to the Lord. You know what I mean? Like, where you're not just actually just asking for things, but where you're genuinely praying and actually having conversation. I'm not saying that God is speaking right back to you, but you know what I mean. But anyways, uh, yeah. So as a close, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know this already, you'll come to learn that people will expect you to act the way that they want you to act, or at least the way that they think that you should act. And if you do something that doesn't line up with how they think you should act, don't be surprised when in the end they think you're the bad guy, because that will happen. I mean, I actually hope that it doesn't happen to you, because it's really weird. Um, it is weird as heck, but don't be surprised. So just letting you know, if that happens, remember, it was said here on the Canadian Crusade podcast that to not be surprised if that happens. And yeah, just boundaries are necessary. And they're good for both parties. They're good for you and they're good for whoever it is that, whatever the relationship is, right? And, so don't be afraid to put them up in place. And don't care what anybody thinks or will say or think. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what they think. What you think is going to be beneficiary to your life and to the time that you spend with God, to the time that you spend with your family, like, yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that. I totally lost my train of thought there. Yeah. If you think it's going to be beneficiary to set up certain boundaries with certain people, do so. Especially if you're doing so for the purpose of actually spending more time with God, your creator. Yeah, so keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. It was kind of a weird one since I'm all by myself. But yeah, it's gonna be like this for, I don't know, what are we today? It's the 8th of July. So it's probably gonna be like this till the end of the month or so. I think the next time that Michael will be on the show is probably in August. I hope so. I'm not actually sure, but so yeah, so just expect to hear a lot from me. Yeah. And if you don't like it, too bad. Yeah. So, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that God blesses you this week and see you in the next episode.